All right, so today I wanted to make a video on my favorite 10 stocks. Now, I would preface this with I think that owning just 10 stocks is not enough. I believe the perfect number, probably 20, 30, maybe upwards of 40, depending on how much time you have to spend on looking into this kind of stuff. But I think you would need at least 20 to be properly diversified, probably upwards of, if you get over 30, then it can become very challenging. Um, but I am going to bring up my top 10. And the criteria here for me is, like I said, 10. But this is for the next 10, 20 years, right? And getting right into it, I'm not going to go super in depth because I don't want to make this too long. But the first one, Amazon, simply because, again, Amazon, very large moat. I mean, if you're looking at companies that you want to invest in, having a moat, otherwise, something meaning that it would be very hard for competition to compete with you, right? And Amazon is probably one of the best definitions of that. I mean, companies can start in, as competition, but they're so far ahead that it would be very hard to catch them, like very, very hard. And not only that, Amazon is very well diversified, right? I mean, they have all of these, they have Amazon Web Services, they own massive amounts of industrial warehouses, like they're fairly well diversified, right? And again, like, does anyone really think Amazon's not going to be around 10 or 20 years from now? Like, of all the companies in existence, there's maybe one other one, and I'm going to talk about it that I think, the least likely to not be around 10 or 20 years from now. And again, this isn't necessarily in any particular order, um, because getting less than 10 even makes things even more hectic, in my opinion. But the next one is CN, Canadian National Railway. And why is that? Is because, again, they're another company that has a very large moat. I mean, this is, of all the companies out there, I mean, this would be one of the hardest to actually. Now, there is competition. There is Canadian Pacific, but other than that, there's nobody. There is literally nobody, and I don't think it would be feasible in today's environment to get to compete with them, right? So this is something. This is a company that I think has a very well established moat. Again, this isn't a company you're going to get rich on necessarily. Um, but it is, I think it will keep pace with the S&P over the long run, and it will do it in a safer way, right? So that's why I own them. And they're growing their dividend very, very nicely. So again, you hold this company for 10 or 20 years, you're probably going to have a nice double-digit dividend on cost, as well as a company that's still growing, right? And in theoretically, the best company is one that has a moat, that is still growing, because there's a lot of companies that have, well, no, there's not a lot, but there's some companies that have moats, but they're not growing. I mean, you have a lot of these utility companies, for example. Yeah, they have moats, but are they growing, right? So that's the question you need to ask, is that if they have a moat, can they still grow, right? Amazon, CN, I think are good examples of companies that have moats that can still grow. And then another one too that would be nice is, are they either buying back shares or are they increasing their dividend over time? Because that's just the cherry on top. Devon Energy, oil and gas is here to stay for the next 10 or 20 years, and the demand is going to go up while the supply will remain limited. A company like this, I think that you're going to get, I don't know, 10% return per year, I think, over the next 10 or 20 years, and you're getting like an 9% dividend on top of that, right? So even if you have a time when oil prices are flat, you're still getting a very nice dividend. So I think energy is a home run over the next 10 or 20 years. Obviously, you're going to have to be careful on when you buy, because prices are fairly volatile. But for a company like this, if you can get it in the 50s, I think that that's a screaming good buy, right? Screaming good. And again, my opinion, obviously, everything my opinion here, but I think it's a very, very good buy if you can get it in the 50s. Um, EQB, Equitable Bank, I think this is a very good company because they're growing very nicely. They're growing their dividend very nicely. And I think they're well positioned for the future, being an online bank. Um, if you look at their services compared to a lot of these other ones, their savings accounts are quite a bit better than the existing banks. They just seem more innovative to me. I do use them a little bit personally, so that's another reason why. I just think they're growing. They're growing very nicely, especially for a bank. Like typically, these are companies that grow very, very, very slowly, right? But they're growing actually very nice, and they're growing that dividend, right? This is another company that you buy it now, you hold for 10 or 20 years, you're going to have a very, very, very nice dividend on cost, right? Google, again, just simply because they have an amazing moat, right? And they're growing fairly nicely as well. Again, does anyone really think Google's not going to exist 10 or 20 years from now? Very, 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 very unlikely. Um, HDB, again, they're the largest bank in India. I think India is, of all the countries out there, India is experiencing very, very high growth. Massive amounts of people are moving into the middle class all the time, and this is a company that's going to benefit from that. They don't pay a great dividend, which is something that one of the only criticisms I have. But again, I think that they're going to grow very nicely over time, and I don't think that that's going to be a very big deal. They already are fairly well established, so I don't think you're going to see crazy growth. But again, India is a country that is going to experience growth for sure, probably more than any other country in the world, at least when you add up all the people they have. So again, this is a company that's going to benefit from that. INMD, this is a company that, of all the companies here, this may be the biggest risk reward one, simply because they're not overly well established, but they are growing insanely fast, like insanely fast, right? This is Stock Unlock. If you look at their insight score, I'm not going to go into it, but it's like 4.9 out of 10. I believe it's the highest company I've ever seen. And I've literally probably been through over 1,000 companies on here, and this is the best scoring one I have seen. So again, this is a company that, again, they are fairly risky. I would acknowledge that, but growing insanely fast. And they're in a field that I think is going to grow very fast, and that the medical devices field, right? And that this is something that there's going to be massive demand for, right? With an aging population, right? I believe they are out of Israel, though, but still. Kroger, they're a very well-established company, and if you look at them compared to the S&P, they're growing actually a little bit faster than the S&P, I believe. And on top of that, they're doing it in in a less volatile way. Their dividend is growing very nicely. That's another thing I very much like about them. So again, another good company that again, almost certainly going to exist, and at the very least keep up with the S&P over the long run, and they're growing their dividend nicely. OLED, this is another two very risky not very risky. I think they're less risky than like the Nasdaq or something like that. But these are the ones that you will get rich on if it works out. This is again a company that designs, like they're into the virtual reality, like all of this kind of stuff, like TVs, computers, tablets, phones. They're growing very fast, very fast. They are a tiny bit expensive, arguably, but just how fast they're growing. Again, this is a company that I'm willing to take the risk on because of the potential they have. Um, Southern Copper, the last one, again, if we do go green, copper is, of all the forms of electricity, or the ways of conducting electricity, you know, copper is probably the best one, at least when you factor in how easy it is to get, how cheap it is. So again, if we do go green, a company like this is going to benefit massively, right? Going to benefit massively. Even if we don't, the demand for copper probably still going to be there, right? If we get a recession, this is going to be a company that's going to get hit hard. It has been hit hard already, so I don't think it can get hit much harder than it does. It has a nice dividend. Payout ratio is a little high on it, but even if that's not the biggest thing at the end of the day. So again, these are my favorite companies. Again, the common theme here is, I do have a couple ones that I would consider somewhat risky, but the common theme here is companies that are established, that are in industries that there is a very high demand for. They are not overly priced. They're not crazy expensive like some of these companies. They are companies where we need their stuff, right? So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.